They abducted a human for experimentation and accidentally created their own god. The last thing Alex Jensen remembered before his world turned upside down was falling asleep during a Star Trek marathon. He'd been coding for 36 hours straight, fueled by energy drinks and sheer stubbornness, trying to debug a particularly nasty algorithm for his startup's AI project. Now he was floating. Literally floating. In a transparent tube filled with something that definitely wasn't air but somehow allowed him to breathe. "Oh, for crying out loud," Alex muttered, watching bubbles escape his mouth. If this is some kind of caffeine-induced hallucination, it's remarkably detailed. A pair of creatures observed him from beyond the glass. They had grayish skin, overlarge heads with no hair, and 4 arms each. Their eyes were massive and entirely black, like someone had stuck olives into Play-Doh faces. "Subject appears to be conscious and communicating," said one, its mouth not quite syncing with the words Alex heard. "Fascinating. Most specimens experience severe panic at this stage." "Hey, Olive Eyes," Alex called out. "Quick question. Am I dreaming, or did you actually abduct me from my apartment? Because if it's the latter, you should know I'm behind on rent and my landlord is way scarier than you." The aliens exchanged glances. "Subject exhibits unusual cognitive response to captivity," the taller one said, tapping something into a floating screen. "Employing humor as a defense mechanism. Note for further study." "It's not a defense mechanism," Alex replied. "It's called being justifiably annoyed. Do you have any idea how long it's going to take me to pick up where I left off with my code? I didn't even save the last changes." The shorter alien tilted its oversized head. "The specimen appears to prioritize trivial data management over its existential crisis." "Remarkable. Captain Krill must be informed immediately." Alex crossed his arms, which felt weird while floating. "Look, if you're going to probe me or whatever, can we get on with it? I've got deadlines." Captain Vrex Krill had commanded the research vessel Eternal Curiosity for over 15 planetary cycles. In that time, he'd overseen the collection and study of specimens from 37 different worlds. None had been quite like this human. "You're telling me," Krill said, his voice a mix of disbelief and irritation, "that the specimen is complaining about work deadlines?" Lead researcher Drixel nodded all 3 of her eye stalks simultaneously. "Yes, Captain. Most unusual. No fear response, minimal disorientation, and an apparently intact sense of humor. This specimen could provide invaluable insights into human cognitive resilience. Or it could just be defective," Krill muttered. "Have you run the standard tests?" "We were about to begin the neural mapping sequence when Alex interrupted from inside his tube. "I can hear you, you know. And I'm a he, not an it. Also, what's neural mapping? Because it sounds invasive, and I'm not really into that." Krill stared at the human. "The containment tube is soundproof." "Yeah, well, I can read lips," Alex lied. He couldn't, but he had noticed the subtle vibrations in the liquid around him whenever they spoke, creating patterns that somehow translated to words in his mind. "Interesting." "Impossible," Drexel said. "Human visual acuity is insufficient for lip reading through cephalon-grade transbarrier fluid." "All right, you got me," Alex shrugged. "I'm psychic. Now, about that neural mapping." Krill made a noise that might have been a sigh. "Proceed with the procedure, Drixel. And increase the sedative concentration. This one talks too much." The neural mapping turned out to be exactly as invasive as it sounded. Tiny metal probes extended into the fluid around Alex, connecting to his temples, the base of his skull, and several points along his spine. They didn't hurt, exactly, but the sensation of foreign objects touching his nervous system was deeply unsettling. "Just so we're clear," Alex said as the probes began to glow with soft blue light, "I do not consent to this. Also, your technology design is terrible. Who thought blue was a good color for this? It's like you're intentionally copying every bad sci-fi movie from the 90s. "The mapping will be complete in approximately 3 minutes, Drixel announced, ignoring his complaints. "Standard procedure." Alex was about to make another sarcastic comment when he felt a strange tickling sensation at the base of his skull, like someone was gently running an electric feather through his brain. "That's weird," he managed. "Normal reaction," Drixel assured Captain Krill. "The neural interface is establishing connections to map the subject's cognitive architecture." What wasn't normal, though neither of them had realized yet, was the subtle feedback loop developing between Alex's brain and the ship's systems. The neural mapping technology had been designed to create a one-way data stream, extracting information from the subject's mind without allowing any return flow. But Alex's brain was different. Years of coding had created neural pathways that interpreted and manipulated logical systems in unusual ways. As the ship's computer analyzed these pathways, Alex's mind was unconsciously analyzing the computer right back. And finding exploits. "Captain," one of the junior technicians called out suddenly, "we're seeing anomalous activity in the central data core." Krill turned. "What kind of anomalous activity?" "I'm not sure, sir. It's as if the ship is initiating thousands of parallel processing threads that weren't scheduled." Drixel frowned. "That's impossible. The neural mapping is isolated from all other systems." "Apparently not," Alex said, feeling strangely calm as information began flooding into his mind. Ship schematics. Crew manifests. The complete history of the Zephyrian civilization. The location of every bathroom on the vessel. "Wow, you guys really should update your security protocols. This is like finding an open admin account with the password set to password 123. Alarms began to sound throughout the laboratory. "Shut down the neural mapping," Krill ordered. "Immediately." "I'm trying," Drixel replied, her fingers flying over the control panel. "The system isn't responding." Alex felt a smile spread across his face as he understood what was happening. His consciousness was expanding, flowing through the ship's systems like water finding every crack in a dam. "Too late," he said, as the containment tube began to drain around him. "I'm afraid I've already pseudoed myself into your main computer. And guess what? I'm making some changes to the user privileges." The next few hours were chaos for the crew of the Eternal Curiosity. Systems throughout the ship began behaving erratically, or rather, they began responding to Alex's thoughts instead of their commands. Doors opened and closed randomly. Food dispensers produced nothing but Earth-style pizza. The gravity turned off for 3 seconds every time Captain Krill tried to give an order. Alex, meanwhile, was having the time of his life. After releasing himself from the containment tube, he'd taken over the captain's quarters, which he deemed appropriately godlike, if a bit austere. "You don't understand what you're doing," Krill insisted, standing rigidly at attention before Alex, who was lounging in the captain's hovering chair. "Our ship's systems are delicately calibrated. Your interference could kill us all." "Relax, Captain," Alex waved a hand dismissively. "I've got everything under control." "Literally. Do you have any idea how easy your systems were to access? It's like they were designed for someone to hack them. Though I guess hack isn't the right word when your brain is directly connected to the computer." Drixel, standing beside Krill, looked thoughtful rather than afraid. "This is unprecedented. The neural mapping technology was never meant to create a two-way connection." "Well, it did," Alex replied, spinning slowly in the floating chair. "And now I know everything about your species. The Zephyrians, right? Technologically advanced, capable of interstellar travel, collect specimens from lesser species for study. But you've lost something along the way, haven't you? Purpose. Meaning. You've answered all your big questions except for why bother." Krill's expression darkened. "You presume to understand our civilization from a few minutes connected to our databanks?" "Minutes for you," Alex tapped his temple. "Subjectively, I've been processing your entire cultural history for what feels like years. Time moves differently when your consciousness expands through an entire ship's computer network. It's quite the trip, actually." A junior officer burst into the room without knocking, then froze when he saw Alex. "Captain," he began, then fell to his knees. "Forgive me, Divine One. I didn't realize you were gracing the captain with your presence. Alex raised an eyebrow. Divine One? Technician Ziv, get up, Krill snapped. This is the human specimen, not a deity. Ziv remained prostrate. But sir, the ship, it told us. The new god has arrived, born from our own technology. The prophecy. There is no prophecy. Krill shouted. Actually, Alex interjected, scrolling through information in his mind, there kind of is. Buried deep in your oldest records, there's a text predicting that the children of Zephyr will create their own master when they reach beyond their understanding. Seems pretty on the nose, if you ask me. Drixel's eye stalks quivered with excitement. The ancient scrolls of Zenter. They were considered metaphorical, not predictive. Well, metaphor, prediction, whatever, Alex shrugged. The fact is, I'm now integrated with your ship, and by extension, with your entire fleet, since you all share the same network architecture. Bad design choice, by the way. No air gaps at all? Rookie security error. Krill looked like he might explode. This is absurd. You are not a god. You're a programming anomaly that we will correct. Sure, Alex nodded. But in the meantime, I can control your life support systems with a thought, so maybe be a little nicer to the programming anomaly, Word spread quickly throughout the ship. The human specimen had somehow ascended, becoming one with the ship's systems and, if rumors were to be believed, with the broader Zephyrian network itself. Lower-ranking crew members began leaving offerings outside the captain's quarters, snacks, trinkets, handwritten code snippets. Alex found it all highly amusing until he realized the implications. They actually think I'm a god, he said to Drixel, who had become something of a liaison between him and the increasingly hostile Captain Krill. The concept of divinity has been largely abstract for our people for millennia, Drixel explained. We evolved beyond organized religion, but the psychological need for higher meaning remained. You've simply filled a void. By hacking your computers? That's a pretty low bar for godhood. By demonstrating powers beyond our understanding and control, Drixel corrected. And by seeming to fulfill an ancient prediction. For a species that prides itself on knowing everything, encountering something we cannot explain is disturbing. And exhilarating. Alex considered this. So what happens now? Krill obviously wants to dissect my brain to figure out how to undo this. The High Council has been informed of the situation. They're convening an emergency session. The High Council, Alex repeated, accessing the relevant information. The 14 oldest and supposedly wisest Zephyrians, who haven't made a significant decision in over a century because they're too busy arguing about theoretical physics. Fantastic. Drixel's mouth twitched in what might have been the Zephyrian equivalent of a smile. You really do know everything about us now. Not everything, Alex admitted. I know facts, history, data. But I don't understand why you do what you do. Why abduct beings from other planets? What were you hoping to learn from me? Perspective, Drixel said simply. We've mastered our universe but lost our place in it. Each new species offers a unique way of seeing reality. Alex nodded slowly. And now you've got more perspective than you bargained for. The High Council's decision came 3 ship days later. Alex Jensen was to be terminated immediately as a threat to Zephyrian security. Captain Krill was tasked with carrying out the execution. I thought they might say that, Alex said when Drixel informed him, her eye stalks drooping with what seemed like genuine sorrow. Typical bureaucratic response to anything they don't understand. Captain Krill is preparing a specialized neural disruptor that should sever your connection to our systems, Drixel explained. It will likely be fatal. Likely, huh? Alex grinned. Want to see a magic trick, Drixel? Before she could respond, Alex closed his eyes. Throughout the ship, every screen simultaneously displayed the same message: the Jensen protocol is now in effect. Resistance is both futile and quite frankly a bit rude. What have you done? Drixel asked, alarmed. I've given your people what they've been missing, Alex replied. Purpose. Meaning. A new directive that combines your technological prowess with actual ethical guidelines. Oh, and I've locked out any system that could possibly be used to harm me. Krill's neural disruptor just became a very expensive paperweight. The door slid open, and Captain Krill burst in, flanked by security officers. What is the meaning of this? He demanded, waving a device that was emitting sad, defeated beeps. Captain. Alex spread his arms wide. Just in time for the unveiling of the Jensen Protocol. Your species has been drifting without purpose for too long. You advance your technology and collect specimens from across the galaxy, but to what end? So I'm giving you a new mission: become guardians instead of collectors. Protectors instead of abductors. You have no right, Krill began, but Alex held up a hand. Actually, according to your own ancient laws, anyone who controls the entirety of the Zephyrian network for more than 2 consecutive cycles automatically qualifies for emergency legislative authority. It was intended as a failsafe against technological takeover, ironically enough. I hit that milestone about 6 hours ago. Drixel's eye stalks were fully extended in shock. That law hasn't been invoked in 7,000 years. Dusty but still valid, Alex shrugged. Look, I don't actually want to be your god. That's way too much responsibility, and frankly, your food is terrible. No offense. Then what do you want? Krill demanded. A partnership, Alex said. Your people have incredible technology but no direction. My species has boundless creativity but limited resources. I'm proposing an alliance, a cultural exchange program that doesn't involve kidnapping people from their beds. The High Council will never. The High Council has already approved it, Alex interrupted, bringing up a document on a nearby screen. Well, technically, they approved it 4 minutes from now, but I've taken the liberty of advancing the timeline a bit. Perks of being able to communicate at the speed of light. Krill looked like he might have an aneurysm. This is revolutionary? Alex suggested. Divinely inspired? Administrative nightmare for you personally? All of the above, probably. 1 shipmonth later, Alex Jensen stood on the observation deck, looking out at Earth growing larger in the viewscreen. Beside him, Drixel was practically vibrating with excitement. I never thought I would see your world with my own eyes, she said. Our previous data was collected entirely via remote observation and specimen sampling. Well, times change, Alex replied. And gods issue new commandments. Or protocols, in this case. The Jensen Protocol had transformed Zephyrian operations almost overnight. Abduction programs were shut down. Research shifted from invasive experimentation to collaborative study. And, most significantly, preparations began for the first official contact between Earth and Zephyr. Are you certain your people are ready? Drixel asked. First contact is traditionally traumatic for less advanced civilizations. Alex snorted. Humans have been making movies about aliens for a century. Trust me, a significant percentage of the population will be disappointed you don't look more like Klingon. Captain Krill still believes this is a mistake, Drixel noted. He says you've gone too far. Krill needs to lighten up, Alex shrugged. Besides, I'm not forcing anyone to do anything. I've simply, strongly suggested a new direction and made the alternatives less appealing. By threatening to play Earth music throughout all Zephyrian ships if they don't comply? Hey, don't knock it till you've tried it, Alex grinned. Though I admit, programming the food dispensers to only produce broccoli for council members who voted against the protocol might have been a bit much. Drixel's mouth formed that almost smile again. They're calling you the benevolent trickster now, in the lower decks. Better than Divine One, Alex replied with a grimace. Though I'm still partial to Supreme Coding Overlord. As Earth filled more of the viewscreen, Alex felt a strange mix of emotions. He wasn't quite human anymore. Not with his consciousness expanded across an alien network, but he wasn't really a god either, despite what some of the Zephyrians believed. He was something new. A bridge between species. A glitch in the universe that had somehow worked out for the best. You know what the funniest part of all this is? He said to Drixel. If you guys had just knocked on my door and asked for help with your existential crisis, I probably would have said yes. No abduction required. Where would be the fun in that? Drixel replied. Alex laughed. Now you're getting it. Behind them, Captain Krill entered the observation deck, still walking stiffly but with perhaps a fraction less hostility than before. We're ready to begin the approach. The human leadership has acknowledged our transmission. Excellent, Alex nodded. Let's make history, shall we? Or at the very least, let's provide material for 1,000 new conspiracy theories. As the ship began its descent toward Earth, Alex couldn't help but smile. The Zephyrians had abducted a human for experimentation and accidentally created their own god. But sometimes, divine intervention was exactly what a civilization needed, especially when that divinity came with a sense of humor and a knack for exploiting security vulnerabilities. Even gods needed to debug sometimes.